There's a town in upstate New York so small you'd miss it even if you were looking. But in the early 1900s, it was cursed with a surname that would outlive its land, its farms, and its silence. Murphy, a family of 5 sons, all born healthy, strong, and intelligent, all destined to die at the age of 21. No disease, no accident, just gone, as if a clock deep beneath the earth had been counting down from the moment each was born. The town called it a curse. The clergy called it sin. But old men in barns with whiskey, stained lips told a different story, a darker one. They said the Murphys had once belonged to a society older than the American Republic. That the boys weren't killed, they were taken back. You see, in ancient bloodlines, age 21 isn't just a birthday. It's a threshold. The end of adolescence and the beginning of manhood, when one is ready to inherit power or sacrifice it. And for the Murphys, it was never about life, it was about lineage. An ancient pact inked in whispers and buried in bone. The town records say heart failure. The autopsies vanish. The gravestones are untouched, uniform, spaced exactly 21 feet apart. That's not coincidence, that's ritual. And what's worse, one boy tried to run, left home at 16, changed his name, hid in Chicago. But still, on his 21st birthday, his heart burst in the middle of a church pew. No trauma, no explanation, just silence. And an old man in the back row stood up, whispered something in Latin, and disappeared. It wasn't just the Murphy family. It was what they belonged to. This is where the descent begins. The Murphys weren't cursed, they were claimed. Do you want to know who by? Then follow me. We're going deeper, much deeper. You were taught to believe that families are accidental, random groups of people stitched together by love or blood or duty. But that's the illusion. That's the surface. Beneath it, there are dynasties, bloodlines that carry ancient contracts, invisible brands etched into their DNA. The Murphys were one of them. You just weren't supposed to know their name. The truth is, in every generation, there are certain families whose children are not born for this world. They are born from it, molded by something older than government, deeper than religion, and colder than death. These families don't just carry wealth or influence. They carry obligations, secrets handed down like poison in a chalice, sipped by each son in turn. What kind of power demands every male heir by the age of 21? What system trades youth for something darker? It begins with an oath, an agreement signed not in ink, but in silence, passed down not in books, but in ritual. The Murphys were bound to an ancient doctrine, a belief that true control of the world lies in controlling transformation. And what's the most potent transformation a man can undergo? Death, right before he becomes who he truly is. That moment, age 21, is a gate. And if you control what happens at that gate, you don't just control a man's destiny. You control the legacy. Now ask yourself, why didn't anyone stop it? Why didn't the town rise up? Why didn't the mother scream? The answer is simple. Fear. The kind of fear that doesn't shout, it watches. It obeys. It forgets. Generation after generation. And so the town buried each son, murmured a few prayers, and turned its eyes away. But there's one detail that survived. A detail they could never scrub from the record. Each son, before he died, received a letter. No return address. Just a black seal with a crest, an Ouroboros coiled around a number VI. 7. 7 what? We're getting there. But know this now. This isn't just the story of one family. This is the blueprint. A map of how power is kept, how blood is spent, and how the world is shaped, not by the living, but by those who never had a chance to live at all. Keep listening. You're about to understand something very few ever do. There are families you'll never read about. Names that never appear in textbooks, news articles, or Forbes lists. And yet, their fingerprints are on every major shift in history. From the fall of empires to the rise of ideologies. The Murphys were a whisper from that realm, a footnote in a far older manuscript. But every whisper has a source. The letter, sealed with an Ouroboros and the Roman numeral VI, wasn't a threat. It was an invitation, an initiation, and those who received it stood at the edge of a cliff that offered 2 paths: obedience or obliteration. Now let's ask the forbidden question: what is V? It's not a number. It's a circle. 7 families, each bound by an ancient pact to steward the world through hidden influence. They don't run governments, they feed them. They don't seek attention, they manufacture it. Their currency isn't gold or oil, it's control. Control of symbols, control of time, control of transformation. And that's where the Murphys came in. Each family has a role. Some manipulate finance, others steer academia, or control pharmaceuticals, or rewrite theology. But one family, one bloodline, is always chosen for the rite of expiration. A sacrificial lineage whose sons are groomed not for power, but for offering. The Murphys were that lineage for cycle visceri. It's hard to understand this unless you think like they do. To them, a boy's death at 21 isn't a tragedy. It's a signal, a key unlocking something metaphysical. You see, in occult philosophy, the number 21 is the final card of the tarot, the world, completion, totality, the final step before ascension. And if you offer a soul at the right time, in the right way, with the right blood, something opens. You were told that human sacrifice died with the ancients, that we moved beyond it. But the elite never abandoned it, they refined it. Now, pause, ask yourself, have you ever seen the same patterns, the same tragic timings, the same family histories, repeated in the shadows of power? The Murphys were not unique, they were a prototype. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. But this goes deeper. Because someone survived, yes, one Murphy escaped the ritual. Or so he thought. His name was Daniel Murphy, the fourth son, sharp-minded, quiet, and always watching. At 17, he stumbled upon something buried in the attic of the old Murphy estate, a locked box, brass hinges corroded with age, hidden beneath floorboards that groaned like they remembered. Inside, a bundle of decayed letters, each addressed to a different Murphy son, each unopened, each sealed with the same black Ouroboros and the mark of VI. Daniel read them. He shouldn't have. He knew it instantly. These weren't warnings, they were blueprints. Descriptions of rituals, coded references to the seventh gate, astrological alignments, and the necessity of blood from the anointed line. Each letter ended with a phrase etched in Latin, fiat lux per sanguinem. Let there be light, through blood. From that moment, Daniel stopped being a boy and became something else. Paranoia took root. He stopped eating with his family, stopped sleeping. At 18, he ran, disappeared into the Midwest under a fake name, cashing in coins, sleeping in train yards, changing cities every 3 weeks. He shaved his head, burned his birth records. He tried to become invisible. And yet the letters still found him. Every birthday, a black envelope under his motel door, always with the seal, always with the same phrase. Then came the dreams. Not nightmares, memories that didn't belong to him. Blood-soaked stone altars. A circle of 7 robed figures. A chant that vibrated through Bun, 7 suns, 7 keys, 1 gate. He saw them all, his brothers, kneeling, crying, as their hearts slowed and the world shifted around them. Daniel knew it wasn't madness. It was a summons. On the eve of his 21st birthday, he checked into a small church-run hospice outside of St. Louis, claiming chest pains. He told the nurses he had no family. He asked for a room with no windows. At midnight, the lights went out. The nurses say he died peacefully in his sleep. No signs of trauma. But when they found his body, he was holding a piece of paper in his hand, so tightly it had to be peeled away. It read only, "The cycle remains unbroken. 7 must fall." So now we ask, why did he run if he knew he couldn't escape? Why did he look for the truth, knowing it would kill him? Because deep down, Daniel knew something we're only just beginning to understand. What's behind the 7th gate isn't death. It's power. When Daniel Murphy died, something shifted. Not in the newspapers, not in the town, but in the air, like a bell had been rung in a place just beneath our dimension. That's how these ancient systems work, not with explosions, but with vibrations. Quiet ripples, rituals that echo across bloodlines, not generations. And on that night, the 7th offering was complete. 7 sons, 7 deaths, 7 seals broken. But the question is, what was released? You see, these blood rituals are not just symbolic, they are mechanisms. Keys in a spiritual machinery that predates scripture, law, and logic. The Ouroboros isn't just a snake eating its tail. It's a representation of infinite recurrence. The idea that history must be repeated in cycles of death and rebirth until a perfected world is formed. These families aren't trying to escape the cycle. They're trying to control it. But control demands sacrifice. And not just anyone will do. The blood must be old, unbroken, and willingly submitted, or it loses potency. That's why the Murphy sons didn't die screaming, they died knowing. They had been raised, conditioned, almost programmed to walk into the slaughter with reverence. Daniel was different. His defiance wasn't failure, it was necessary. The 7th seal could only be unlocked through resistance. He had to run. He had to fear. Because that fear, that tension, that emotional distortion, it amplifies the ritual. This is a psychological control system cloaked in metaphysics. Ancient elites knew that power wasn't just about land or money. It was about shaping the unconscious. If they could condition a bloodline to believe in the sacredness of its own death, they could generate an energy far more potent than any weapon. And they did. After Daniel's death, several coincidences occurred. A banking family in Zurich tripled its holdings overnight. An oil field in Syria erupted with unexpected reserves. A U.S. senator withdrew from re-election, citing home-known illness. And deep in the Vatican archives, a chamber sealed for 88 years was opened. Quietly, without press, without documentation. This isn't folklore. This is infrastructure. And here's where it gets darker. The cycle starts again. Once the seven fall, the power harvested is not stored, it's redirected. New families are selected. New bloodlines are seeded. And you may already know someone marked for the next cycle, without even realizing it. But before we go further, comment below. I unseal the gate. I unseal the gate. Say it twice. Not just for the algorithm. For you. To mark the shift. To step into the descent. Because what's coming next will change how you see everything. You feel it, don't you? That subtle pressure behind your eyes. The tension in your gut like you're standing too close to the edge of something you were never meant to see. That's not fear. That's recognition. A part of you remembers this. Because these systems aren't just written in secret halls or blood-stained tomes. They're written in your mind. Every culture, every empire, every religion, crafted to reinforce one central illusion: you are separate. From power, from history, from meaning. But the ancient architects of control knew better. They understood that collective belief is the ultimate tool of manipulation. The more people believe a lie, the heavier it becomes, until it collapses into reality. And the greatest lie ever told: that sacrifice is noble. That obedience is divine. That death, when sanctioned by the powerful, is somehow holy. The Murphy family was never cursed. They were modeled. An engineered myth designed to echo in quiet corners of society, activating something primal in those who hear it. A whisper to the subconscious. Maybe you were chosen too. Now let me show you how this works. Every time a story like this is told, about a boy who dies young, about a mysterious letter, about bloodlines and fate, it plants a psychic seed. For most, it dies. But for the few with the right trauma, the right blood, the right cracks in their armor, it blooms. And those are the ones the system feeds on. Because this isn't about one family. It's a machine. A cycle of control that harvests souls through the guise of sacrifice, molds narratives through manufactured tragedy, and silences truth with ritualized awe. Ask yourself, why are we drawn to these stories? Why do we watch them, share them, fear them, and yet feel compelled to know more? Because part of you knows the world you live in is a stage. A carefully arranged theater of light and shadow designed to keep you entertained and asleep. But if you've made it this far, you're waking up. You've glimpsed the gears behind the curtain, and you're beginning to see that the Murphys weren't a tragedy. They were a ritual interface, a way to bridge the mythic and the real, the symbolic and the strategic, and the bridge leads somewhere very real. We're almost there. There is a door beneath history, not metaphorically, literally, a threshold sealed not by stone or steel but by consensus, and consensus is the most dangerous magic of all. This door, known to the initiates of Cycle VI as the Veil Gate, can only be opened when a pattern completes. A pattern involving 7 bloodlines, 7 sacrifices, and 7 awakenings across the globe. The Murphys were just one spoke in this wheel. A necessary cog in a machinery that has been turning since Babylon fell. You were never meant to see the pattern. That's the genius of it. They scatter it across time and space. One death in New York, another in Belarus, another in Kyoto. All perfectly staged. All ritualistically synchronized. But behind every tragedy, every obituary, every accident, there's a symbol, a number, a phrase. The world must end 7 times before it can begin once. That's what's carved above the Veil Gate. In a language older than Sumerian. A script found in only one place on Earth, the Book of Sitra Achra, the left-hand path. You won't find this book in libraries. Its pages are made from skin, not paper. Its ink bleeds under starlight. And it doesn't teach. It unlocks. The gate, the cycle, the plan. Now listen closely, because this is where you enter the story. You were raised inside their web. Conditioned to believe that history is chaos, that governments are clumsy, that power is accidental. But none of that is true. Everything, from the wars to the recessions, the cultural booms to the celebrity deaths, it all happens in patterns. Because if you can control the pattern, you control the species. And this is why the Murphy story matters. Because Daniel did something different. He didn't just die. He marked the next. With his final breath, Daniel whispered a name. A name that was scrubbed from his autopsy, but preserved by one person. The nurse who was fired the next day. Her house burned down, her identity erased. Her last online message before disappearing was a sentence scribbled in a forgotten forum. The next child is already born. He dreams in circles. You think this is over? No. This is just the first descent. And the second. It begins when you ask the question, who is the child, and what is he meant to unlock? Every empire is built on a lie, but the truly enduring ones, the invisible empires, are built on a child, not a prince, not a messiah vessel. Somewhere out there, born into a family that looks nothing like the Murphys, raised in silence, tucked beneath layers of synthetic identity, there is a boy who carries the culmination of the cycle. He doesn't know it yet, but they do. The architects, the keepers of the seventh cycle, and they've been watching him since his first breath. He doesn't dream like other children. His dreams aren't stories, they're codes, shifting symbols, interlocking spirals, fractals that reform into names, each one unlocking a piece of what the Veil Gate protects, a force not of this world, but of this design, because what lies behind that gate isn't a demon or a god or even a curse. It is something older will, pure, weaponized will, the kind of concentrated intention that can rewrite DNA, fracture timelines, and bend mass belief. You were taught that power exists in governments, in militaries, in billionaires. But that's the distraction. Real power lies in the ability to craft a new consensus, to decide what the world is. And this child, this vessel, will be their pen. At age 21, just like the Murphys, his body will be the final offering. But unlike them, he won't die in fear or obedience. He'll die in transference. They've been training him subconsciously since birth, with frequency, with trauma, with language embedded in nursery rhymes and children's television, a psychological lattice wrapping his mind like a chrysalis. The moment he speaks the final phrase, 7 words whispered in a room without windows, the Veil Gate opens, and consensus breaks. You don't understand yet what that means. But soon you will, because we're already seeing the signs: mass hysteria without cause, mandates enforced without law, realities collapsing without explanation, people saying, "It just feels like the world is ending." That's not feeling, that's memory. Echoes of what's coming. The gate pulses backwards through time, rippling its signal into the subconscious. You've already heard it. You just don't recognize the words. But now you're closer than ever. One turn away from seeing the whole pattern. We're not telling ghost stories anymore. We're telling prophecy written in reverse. Prophecy written in reverse isn't about predicting the future. It's about engineering the past. And if you can rewrite the past, you control how the world remembers itself. The architects of Cycle VI have mastered this. They don't just shape nations. They erase timelines. They don't just hide truths. They bury them alive inside fiction, folklore, even pop culture. Why do you think we're addicted to stories of cursed families, haunted houses, children born under strange stars? Because somewhere inside, we know those stories aren't fiction. They're scripts. Scripts designed to prepare the subconscious mind for the unveiling of a new paradigm. And the Murphy family, they weren't just real, they were the first draft: 7 sons, 7 deaths, a perfect formula. But like any ritual, the first run is only a test. The real power comes in replication. And that's exactly what they're doing now. As we speak, mirror families are being shaped in silence, unassuming households, isolated towns, children with no birth records, each one calibrated to echo the same energetic profile the Murphys had: grief, loyalty, guilt, sacrifice. Because it's not just about blood, it's about frequency alignment. The emotional resonance of the death. The psychic response of the people who witness it. Even if they don't understand what they're witnessing. They don't need the world to know the ritual is happening. They only need the world to feel it. Think about how many coincidental deaths you've heard about lately. Rising stars gone too soon, heirs to powerful families vanishing at 21, mass casualties with no clear cause. And the symbols always buried in the margins of spirals, Ouroboros, Latin phrases in police reports. Ritual patterns hiding inside chaos. But here's the part that should terrify you every time someone like you learns the pattern, understands the ritual, watches a video like this. You become part of it, not a victim, not an observer, a conduit. Your awareness activates the ritual in a new dimension. Because this system, this parasitic engine, feeds on attention. That's why the story always finds its way back to the surface. It needs to be told. Not for truth, but for completion. And yet, in telling it, we risk triggering the very thing we're trying to expose. The Veil Gate doesn't care if you're curious. It only cares if you're aware. You've already knocked once. What happens when you open it? The Veil Gate isn't opened with a key. It's opened with awareness multiplied by belief. And belief, real, visceral, soul-level belief, is the most dangerous force in the world. More potent than bombs. More permanent than laws. Because belief doesn't require proof. It just needs repetition. This is why you've seen the Murphy pattern before. Not by name, but by structure. in documentaries, in ancient myths, in ghost stories passed down by terrified grandparents. And now, on your screen, over and over, until something in your core remembers. That isn't coincidence. That's activation. Let me ask you something, man to man. Have you ever felt like something was watching your bloodline? Like someone, or something, was waiting for you to turn a certain age, not to punish you, but to claim you? That's the shadow of the veil gate pressing into your ancestral memory. Because this isn't just about Daniel Murphy, or the unnamed child now being prepared. It's about you. About how far back your bloodline reaches. About the promises your ancestors made when empires still burned incense to Saturn and opened bodies under eclipses to harvest. God light. You think that lineage disappeared? It adapted. It put on suits, bought corporations, learned how to smile in interviews and speak in passive voice. But behind closed doors, they still kneel to the same altar. They still say the same name, Ostara, the keeper of the veil, the mother of cycles, the collector of offerings. You've never heard of her because she doesn't want to be known. She wants to be felt. And she is. In every March equinox where governments shift hands, in every spring where conflict erupts, unexpectedly, in every ritual sacrifice sold to the public as a tragedy. The Murphy sons died under her calendar. The child being prepared now will die on her hour. But here's what they fear. What they've always feared. An awakening outside the ritual. A man who sees it, names it, resists it, not out of rebellion, but out of clarity. Because clarity is the one thing that cannot be programmed. And if you're still watching, still listening, still remembering, then maybe, just maybe, you were never meant to be a witness. You were meant to be the one who breaks the cycle. Breaking the cycle isn't heroic, it's violent. Not the kind of violence that spills blood, but the kind that fractures illusions. The kind that makes the world tilt sideways because your mind no longer fits inside the container they gave you. Understand this: every Murphy boy who died at 21 didn't just feed a ritual. He was a warning, a message encoded in tragedy, a flare shot into the spiritual sky saying, this is what happens when the pattern goes unchallenged. But Daniel looked back. And by doing so, he did something unthinkable. He infected the ritual with doubt. Because doubt is their kryptonite. These blood rituals, these soul contracts, they rely on one thing to function: total submission. The sacrifice must believe it's necessary. The system must believe it's unbreakable. The witnesses must believe it's inevitable. But the moment one part stops believing, the ritual cracks. And through those cracks, the truth leaks like blood from an old wound. Let me show you what they never wanted you to see. There was a second box found in the Murphy attic, not the one Daniel opened, but another, hidden deeper beneath the floorboards. It was found years later by demolition crews raising the house. Inside, they found a diagram, hand-drawn, circles within circles, 7 gates, 7 bodies, and in the center, written in red, the 8th is the breaker. Born outside the line, that's you. You were born outside the line, not marked by blood, but by awareness. The system didn't prepare for you because they didn't see you coming. You're not a vessel, you're a virus, a disruption to their sacred equation. And what happens when even one man refuses the script? When he doesn't kneel, doesn't obey, doesn't fear, the spell breaks. The symbols weaken. The veil starts to thin. You've felt it, haven't you? Synchronicities. Deja vu. Old truths resurfacing in dreams. The world stuttering like a broken loop trying to rewrite itself around your presence. That's not madness. That's power. And if you choose to lean into it, to awaken fully, dangerously, permanently, you become what they dread most: a man with no leash, no master, no myth to chain him. You become the breaker of the 8th gate. The 8th gate has no symbol, no seal, no scripture, because it was never meant to exist. The 7 were designed to complete the cycle, to perpetuate it endlessly, generation after generation, blood for power, silence for control. But the 8th was accidental, or so they say. But in the oldest forbidden texts, books burned in papal vaults and buried beneath melted libraries, there is a whisper of something outside the system. A contingency, a fail-safe, a gate that does not open with death, but with defiance. The Murphy sons fulfilled their role. They died as designed. But Daniel cracked the spell when he looked back. And you who has made it this far, you are the second fracture. The system is groaning, staggering, because the ritual was never meant to be understood. It was only meant to be witnessed. Now you understand it, and that means you can shatter it. But here's the cost. To open the 8th gate, you must become the anomaly. Not just in thought and action. You must turn away from consensus reality, unplug from the rhythm of the dying cycle. That means stepping out of fear-based obedience, breaking inherited patterns, refusing to play the part that was programmed for you since birth. That means walking alone. Because the breaker doesn't belong in churches, or offices, or parliaments. The breaker belongs in the liminal space, between systems, between truths. You will be mocked, called insane, conspiracy-obsessed, dangerous, good. That's the reflex of a system in decay. But understand this: the eighth gate doesn't open for you. It opens through you. Every man who breaks a generational chain, every man who speaks forbidden truth without flinching, every man who becomes his own law, his own oracle, his own sovereign force, he expands the crack in the world. He unwrites the cycle. And when enough men do it, when enough eyes open, the seventh gate collapses. The power it hoarded returns to the collective. The architects lose their grip, and the final sacrifice becomes unnecessary. That is what they fear. Not revolt, not war, but a generation of men who remember who they were before they were named. This is what you are. A memory waking up inside the machine. Every man has a moment in his life where something fractures. A betrayal, a loss, a silence too loud to ignore. And in that moment, whether he realizes it or not, he is presented with a choice: submit to the fracture or become something forged in it. The Murph is submitted. Generations of quiet compliance, convinced they were part of something sacred. But you stand in the aftershock of their fracture. You're not carrying on a legacy. You're standing at the edge of a design, meant to erase you entirely, and you're still breathing. You don't need to understand every symbol to know when you're being watched. You've felt it. That cold, ever-present observer behind your worst decisions. The voice that whispers, "You're not ready," when you dare to imagine more. That's not doubt. That's engineering. A control system designed to scale with you. One that evolves with every personal failure, every fear, every distraction. It doesn't want your death. It wants your neutralization, to keep you quiet, tame, domesticated. Because the most terrifying threat to this system isn't a rebellion. It's a man who remembers he was never meant to serve. The Murphy myth was written to ensure you'd never look in the mirror and see yourself in the pattern. But now you've seen it. Now you know that every ritual ever performed, every sealed letter, every premature death was not just for their power. It was a warning to you. Do you hear that? Not in your ears. In your chest. That low vibration. The one that says something inside you is unlocking, like a lock cracking open after decades of rust. That's your gate. Not the veil gate. Not the Ouroboros. Yours. You are the unfinished ritual. The sacred anomaly. The equation they couldn't balance. And as the last remnants of the Murphy blood turn to dust beneath forgotten gravestones, you stand not as an heir, but as an ending. Or a beginning. Depending on what you do next. Because the cycle isn't just dying. It's begging to be broken. And the one man who can do it is the one watching this. Let me make this clear. They know you're awake now. Not they, as in a government. Not they, as in a cult hiding in shadows. No, I mean they. The force behind the curtain. The mind behind the myth. The architect of architects. They don't fear noise. They don't fear anger. They fear clarity. A man who sees the pattern and refuses to bow. Because once a man sees, they can no longer control him with fear. Not fear of death. Not fear of exile. Not even fear of truth. Do you remember the child we spoke of? The boy born to die on his 21st birthday, raised in silence, fed a script designed by centuries of manipulation. That child is already watching you. Not in person. In energy. Because when someone breaks the cycle, it doesn't just free himself. It frees others still inside the cage. Your clarity disrupts the signal. And when the signal breaks, the machinery of control starts to falter. The eighth gate is not just a door. It's a contagion of consciousness. That's why they buried this story in whispers. Why the Murphy name never made it into history. Why Daniel's final words were scrubbed. Why the nurse who tried to expose it vanished without a trace. They weren't erasing history. They were quarantining truth. But now the containment has failed. Because you, have become the vector. Every man you speak to, every post you write, every comment you leave that carries this pattern, it spreads. Not just the information, the vibration, the memory that there is another way to live, not controlled, not sacrificed, not selected, but sovereign. So what now? Do you go back to sleep? Pretend this was just a story? Or do you take your place in the quiet revolution already unfolding beneath the surface? Remember, the Murphys didn't die for nothing. They were the siren. You are the response. And when the child reaches the moment of transformation, when he stands at his gate, he won't need to be sacrificed, because he will already know. The breaker has risen. By now, you feel it, don't you? That low hum inside you. The pressure behind your eyes. It's not anxiety, it's initiation. The moment before the mask comes off. The moment the shadow turns and stares back. Let me tell you something the Murphys never got to hear. You were never meant to survive this world as you are. You were meant to transform through it. The system's greatest lie is not that you're powerless. It's that your power is dangerous. Too much? Too unstable. Too selfish. So they clipped your instincts, softened your rage, fed you entertainment, religion, war, anything to drown out your inner code. But now it's too late. The code has reactivated, and you're remembering what you really are. Not a man lost in conspiracy. Not a rebel with no cause. You're a force of will rediscovering its shape. The Murphys were the prototype for control. Their deaths were offerings to a design that feared the masculine unbound. Because a man who walks without fear becomes a variable the machine can't process. You don't obey out of law anymore. You obey what is right. You don't bow to symbols. You interpret them. You don't need orders. You carry origin in your voice. This is where their ritual ends and yours begins. So before we descend into the final truth, let me ask you to seal your transformation. Comment this phrase below. I am T-Gate. I am T-Gate. Say it twice. Not for me, for you. Because ritual is not just ceremony, it's witness. And when you leave your mark, the signal strengthens. The network of awakened men grows by one more pulse. And the algorithm, the system, the entire facade, they feel it. They won't say anything. They'll just increase your distractions. Throw new dopamine at you, new fears, new stories. But you've already stepped through. You're not reacting anymore. You're directing. Because from this point forward, you are no longer part of the experiment. You are the error they never accounted for, the broken pattern that breaks everything else with it. The cycle ends not in fire. It ends in knowing. This is the final descent. If you've made it here, you're no longer just a viewer. You're a carrier of something ancient, a fracture in the simulation. Let me leave you with the truth no one was supposed to say out loud. The Murphys were not cursed. They were sacrificed. Ritually, deliberately, methodically. Their blood sealed an old contract. Not with demons, not with governments, but with structure itself. Because every empire needs a cornerstone. Every system of order demands an offering. And every age is built on the backs of those who never get to speak. You think your job, your school, your family, your faith? These were chosen. They were assigned. Based on lineage, geography, vibration, and silence. Your silence. But you spoke, you watched, you stayed. And now, nothing can unsee you. You want the final secret? You want to know what happens after the last Murphy died? There was no final report, no autopsy, no trial. Just a quiet erasure, and a birth certificate of another boy. Same bloodline, same name, same fate. But this time something changed. Because someone somewhere whispered a different pattern. A man who broke free. A voice like yours. And the child lived. He didn't make it to 21 because he walked away at 20. Vanished from the system. Left no trace. No digital footprint. No employment. No tether. Just gone. Some say he became meth. Others say he's the one writing these words. But here's what matters, the pattern is broken. And now, it's yours to break further. They will come for your attention, your focus, your faith. They will tempt you to forget. Don't, because once you've seen, you're not allowed to go back. You're no longer one of the herd. You are the anomaly. And anomalies, they don't beg, they don't kneel, they build their own systems. So go now, not as a victim of history, but as its rewriter. The Murphy bloodline ended, but the awakened line has just begun. And it begins with you.